other day. Start every episode with the exact same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's another episode of Keepin It Rio, your favorite podcast, the world-renowned Keepin It Rio. And I am ecstatic for today's guest because I've been watching for a little while now and been very hopeful that we could get this together, and reached out to me the other day and we made it happen. So with no hesitation whatsoever, folks, I'd like to welcome today's guest to the show, Ken Younce. Ken, welcome to Keepin It Rio. How's it going, my friend?
Going great, man. Appreciate you having me on, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I've been following you for a little bit, and just before we hit record, I kind of told you that I think we're going to have an amazing episode this week because we've got a lot of things in common, a lot of common interests, and I always love talking to people that like the same things I do. So,
right,
pretty good. So
makes it easy.
It does. It makes it a lot of fun too. That's for sure. So let's just kick it off, my friend. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing, what you've got going on. Tell us a little bit about Ken the man, and we'll just roll with it from there.
Yeah, man. I am currently I have a company called Be Real Sales Training. It's kind of a long time coming. I've been in sales pretty much my entire adult life in multiple different industries. Always found myself at the top of the heap pretty quickly. Would become managers and all these different things. And so I always had a passion for that. And then kind of parallel to that, I was always a coach. I was an adjunct football coach for 23 years, meaning that I wasn't a teacher. They just paid me to come in and be a coach just like the other guys. I just wasn't a teacher. But I coached 78 different sports teams in 6 different sports. So I coached a lot of coaching, man. My passion is that. And whether it was a volunteer, for a church league basketball game, which I don't know how to take it easy on anything. Like I was recording those and we was having film breakdowns and I had stat sheets for them. I treated them all like they were all at the same level. If I was coaching high school basketball, man, I only know one way to go, and it's because I'm super competitive. My last stint into last thing that I got into sales wise was door-to-door roofing sales. And I'm sure you know Hunter Ballou.
Hunter's the man.
Yeah, Hunter.
I got a copy of his book right there.
Yeah, man. So if you read page 158, that's he talks about my Be Real sales training in there. But that being said, man, I got into it. I was 48, 49 years old. I was another industry. I was actually the state rep for Rydell, the football helmet company.
Nice.
And about 85% of my accounts were youth accounts. And that's when all the concussion stuff was being talked about. And all the youth programs were like, man, we're not going to offer youth leagues, tackle football. We're going to go to flag. Well, I sell helmets and shoulder pads, man. Where does that leave me? So ultimately it survived that little scare. Everybody didn't turn to flag, but I was hitting a point where I was like, well, I got to, make a kind of be in front of this. So I started looking, had a couple of guaranteed things lined up, 6 figures, easily, would have hit, probably close to 200 with one of them just as a base before bonuses. And I was like, I got some good opportunities, but man, I'm just not passionate about that. And met up with Hunter and through a friend. And he taught me into coming out there and just straight commission only. So I come back and told my wife at the time, we had been together for nearly 33 years. And she said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I think I'm going to go sell roofs. She said, how much does it pay? I said, nothing if I don't sell any. And she thought I was absolutely crazy. And fast forward 3 or 4 months and I'm making $8,000 to $10,000 a week. And, once again, I'd taken on another sales, endeavor and figured it out fairly quickly. And I looked around and I saw people struggling, man. I was like, and I'd go out on the doors with them and try to help and stuff. And my passion's always been more about helping other people succeed than myself. And, man, I would just see their approach. I was like, man, we got to fix this, dude. Like, and so I'd watched all the training and everything like that. And I told Hunter, I said, man, I want to create a sales training program. And he goes, well, what do you do differently? And that kind of was funny when he asked me that, because no matter where I've been in sales, everybody always came to me 2-3 months in and says, well, what are you doing different, bro? Like, what are you doing? How are you selling? And I said, I just be real with people, man. So it was always a saying that I had. And I just told Hunter, I said, man, I just talk to people. He goes, well, you can't you can't have a training course where you just tell people to go talk to people. I said, yeah, agreed.
I've tried that. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. So basically from that point, it really, the last 8 or 9 months that I was out there selling, I really was just doing it as a tracking method so I could document exactly what I was doing so I could coach it. And so that's really what the last little run of me being in sales was. So I really started building it out. And from that, man, I had never read a sales book in my life, sales training or anything like. I had not read but maybe 2 books as an adult, like honestly back in around 2020. Now, during that time, Chuck, I lost my 33-year marriage. I lost my mother and my father in 10-month period. And that was during COVID as well. So it was like, man, it was just, I was at the very, very bottom, dude. And so from that point, that's why I can go back out here and start building up my pipeline and selling roofs again. But man, that's not my passion. I think that all those things hitting me made me realize, man, life is short, and everything is somewhat temporary in life. And I look back at it and I said, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about coaching, and I'm not an NFL coach or anything like that. So how do I make a living coaching? And then I'd look, so well, what am I really good at? I'm really good at sales. And there are sales coaches out there, and I knew that my approach would be different. So I would have a UV, a unique value proposition, UVP. So I really just kind of started throwing all that stuff together, man. And finally, after trying to force a couple more square pegs into a round hole, I decided back in March of this year that, man, I'm going all in on this. Got a LLC, a website, built out my Go High level, my pipeline, abilities to book calls. And I sat here and I've created, I think, 470 slides that build out 26 sales modules, another, I think, 22 leadership modules, and probably about a 15 to 20 modules centered around personal development.
Man, I'll tell you what, I love it. And you're serious about success. And the thing that you just said there that really got me is I can understand. I'll tell you what, I went through a similar situation. The last couple of years were not exactly how I had envisioned them being. And when you talk about hitting the bottom and everything kind of going wrong at once, I kind of felt the same thing. And I lost my passion for a little bit, and I'm still fighting to get it back in certain times. But when you're doing something that you don't really love, it drains on you. And when things like the personal losses, I had the same thing happen, both of my parents, and it affects you, and you don't realize how much it affects you until you're into the deal. And then things kind of start going wrong, and you really start getting kind of down and depressed. And having something like this that can pick you back up, give you fire, give you that vision is really the most awesome thing about life, because we can make of it whatever we want, right? Mm-hmm. And when you say, hey, in March, I'm going all in, it's like betting on yourself and then giving yourself that opportunity to do whatever it is in your mind that you've envisioned and actually making it happen. It's transformational for us. And I've always said, many of the times when I was down, I would get a opportunity to go, and I do a sales training quite a bit myself. I go with Mike Code, who is a pretty well-known roofing sales guy, trainer. And he lets me go with him to some of his clients all over the country. Last week, I had a buddy of mine, my business partner over in Columbus, Ohio, sent one of his guys down for the week, and I got to train him for an entire week, sent him back to the house in Ohio, and he sold 2 roofs in the first 4 days. And nice. I think when you get those kind of things happening, it really just ignites you, and it makes you really realize this is awesome, and I love doing this. And I kind of want to go back a little bit in the story. And I do, before we get too far in, I want to ask you, 6 different sports, 78 teams. What 6 sports were you a coach at?
Well, football is my main love. But football is probably what I make the most references to, because a lot of times while I'm coaching, I'm using, references, and I've referenced football a lot, but football, basketball, baseball, soccer. I coached track. I coached a couple of things indirectly. Like I coached flag football, youth flag football. I actually started a flag football league here that was the first one in South Carolina back in 2001. And now they have actually a state championship like in every county in the state is playing
Nice.
it. But I actually was the first one that founded it. But yeah, man, I coached it all, man. Volleyball, coached volleyball for 2 seasons. So yeah, but football was my main love. And how I got to 78 is when you coach varsity football in South Carolina, we don't have the budgets to where you have a separate JV, team. So you're really coaching both teams. So I coached, every year that I coached high school, I was really coaching 2 teams at the same time. And then my kids were playing. I coached youth programs that my kids wasn't even a part of. I coached AAU basketball, middle school basketball. I love coaching middle school basketball probably more than anything as a coach. In-game coaching, I love basketball better. Practices and preparation, I loved football more. The reason I love basketball so much was because you kind of have your handprint on it more. You know what I mean? Like you can communicate to them while they're on the court, and you don't have a lot of coaches. There's not a lot of different input. Because you get to the high school level. I was offense coordinator and quarterback coach for a 5A school. And the reality is, man, like you've got your little leg, but then there's a DC, a special teams coach, and a head coach that, has a lot of say-so in things. Whereas, basketball, you're the head coach, man. You're pretty much everything.
You're the
And
guy,
so,
absolutely.
yeah. So it made it easy. And not being a teacher, I'm not allowed at a high school level to be a head coach of a varsity program. So to be over it, I needed to be at the middle school level. So I coached middle school basketball for years. Found myself, Chuck, man, like I think based on how I grew up and, the neighborhoods I grew up in and my home life and everything like that, I wanted to work with the kids that were a little bit at a disadvantage. And so I stayed over there and we won a couple of county championships when people thought, man, how in the world are you even corralling that chaos over there? And man, I just love doing it. What's a funny story is to show you the impact that you make as a coach is why I say all the time, even though I was coaching people on how to block, tackle, score baskets, all these different things. The reality is 80% of your coaching is teaching kids how to deal with life and family and home life and school work and breaking up with a girlfriend and, all these different things. Right. So I took a year. I just won a county championship with the school, and the high school kept trying to pull me up to coach their C team program. I said, okay, man, I'll go up there. And, so I went up there for 1 year. In that 1 year that I wasn't at the middle school, one of my kids that had played for me the previous year, he commences going into the assistant principal, who's also the AD, going into her office, stealing her keys during school, steals her car,
Nice.
drives on the other side of the county to pick up somebody else that's playing hooky. And it's like, and then whenever they caught him, her instinct was to call Coach K. So instead of calling the parents, she called me. And man, that's when you're doing the right thing, you're making the right impact. So the next year I went back to the middle school. I just felt like that was a pivotal place where you can lose kids, is right there at that 7th and 8th grade point. And so I really, really hunkered down right there, man, and loved it. And then after my son graduated from high school, my younger son, back in 2011, man, I was just toasted, man. I'd coached so much and I figured it up, man, just to, when you figure 10 hours a week on Sundays for film, I got late stay on Wednesdays where we paint the field, whether it's home or away for varsity, JV's going to be there. So every week you got to paint the field. So that's usually 11:30 at night under the lights. You got JV nights on Thursdays, you're home at midnight. Varsity nights, you get home at 12:30, 1 o'clock. If the guys don't go out to like a late night diner or something to have dinner together, if we win, nobody wants to do that if you lose. And weight room, I ran the weight room Monday through Thursday, 10 weeks out of the year. In the summertime, you got 7-on-7s, man. You end up spending about 1,100 hours, in a season of coaching, man, and you're getting a $7,000-8,000 stipend, dude. Like it's just not, you're doing
Do
it.
the
So,
math on that. It's
dude,
for the love of the game.
Oh man,
for
it's the
sure.
love of the game. And so I always say, people say that they're a coach, man, I get it. But when you're almost coaching for free because you love it, then you can really at that point say that you're a coach, man. It's like because I didn't give anybody, I didn't give anybody any less of me. If I was coaching an NBA team, I couldn't have been as intentional about the way I coach. And that's what I bring into my sales coaching. There's no rocks unturned. There's everything, we prepare, I don't call it role play as much. I call it scrimmaging. I don't know anybody that does a scrimmage. If you're going to fight and you're going to have to spar, and it's better to, what they say is it's better to, the more you sweat in in training, the less you bleed in war. So I'm real big proponent of that. But really just breaking down, to me, sales was like a sport, man. It's literally like a sport. Like it's, and what I loved about door knocking, Chuck, man, was like, I feel like even though I train any kind of sales, it doesn't matter, dude. Sales is sales. You give me the product and the price. I can sell with anybody out there in whatever industry. I don't even care what it is. I had actually sold probably 30, 40 roofs before I knew what R&R meant on an insurance scope. Like I didn't care. People were buying me. People buy people. They trusted me, and they trusted if I didn't know what I was doing, that I would work for a team that we did as a group. And so I didn't even bother trying to learn every aspect of the roof. I'm not building the roof. We got a hell of a team that does that, and I tell the homeowner, say, listen, man, if you, when I played football, I was a quarterback. If you wanted me to, kick extra points, we weren't going to get any extra points. Like if you wanted me to, block on a extra point, then we were probably going to get a lot of them blocked. Like it was just, I had my skill set, and I'm really good at talking to people and informing people. And that's what I'm here for. Case in point, you've not shot me or called the police on me yet. So I guess I'm doing pretty good. And they just laugh and say, but the reason I work for this team, Mr. Chuck, is that I work with a team that I don't have to make any apologies for. They do things the right way. I can work for any company out there. I choose to work with these guys because they're so good. If there is anything in this process that I don't know, I'll be happy to find out before we get right back to you. In the meantime, this is this, and this. So I just move on. But so it never really mattered to me what I sold, man. I just know how to connect with people. And that was the sport to me. It's like I talk about Bo Jackson. Bo knows, you remember all the Bo knows commercials?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Man, it didn't matter. Football and baseball highlighted Bo's athleticism, but at the core of what Bo was he was just one of the purest athletes that ever walks the planet. And so to me, that's what sales is. I coach you on how to be the athlete. What you sell is almost irrelevant to me. Yes, I can sell roofs. Okay. Well, I mean, if it's an insurance game, it's not that hard, dude. Like it would be easy to be a car salesman too, if you could sell it for 90% off. I mean, you're selling deductibles for the most part. So my challenge was never to try to just sell that job. It was to try to upsell it. We get in the red zone. Yeah, we got points. We're going to get a field goal, but I'm trying to get a touchdown. So, it's like, what's your conversion rate, as far as getting touchdowns. So anyway, that's just always been my approach, man. And another thing that I kind of bring to the table, this totally different, is I feel like sales training, a lot of people think that it's price, product, and process. And I think there's two other pieces that are drastically missing in not only in sales, but in society as a whole. And that is the people skills, right? And what develops and creates better people skills is personal development. So really in alignment with my sales training, I don't just teach you, I'm not going to just sprinkle magic dust and make you magically a great salesperson. Coaching salespeople is two-part, is coaching sales and coaching people. And so as much as I had to coach young men on how to, be better students, be better, future husbands, be better sons, better pupils, students, all that, man, that's really where I see a big gap in today's, because it's like, let's just get them hired, show them what our product is, how to enter in the system, how to do this, and then turn them loose. And then everybody brags on, we did $15 million last year. Yeah, but how much did you leave on the table? You might have left 8. Like, so like, again, what's your conversion rate? So I'm real big on coaching, not only the sales skills, but also the person themselves. So I think coaching salespeople is coaching sales and coaching people. So I really pour into personal development. I coach it and I pour into leadership. And I feel like those three things, the development of the sales skills, yes, but also leadership skills and personal development, people skills, is really how I round out my coaching, which is, I believe, much different than the approach for most guys. They just tell you how to talk to them and how to beat the insurance companies to get them approved for that and all these different, that's wonderful. That's great. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to sign a piece of paper and hire your company on. And they're going to do that through the relationships that we build and the way that we connect with other humans.
I agree with you 100%. We're on the same page when it comes to sales training, when it comes to leadership and development. I'm the exact same way. I tell everyone that I train, nobody cares about what kind of shingles you're doing. Nobody cares about the number of nails you're putting in. That's all minutia, and it's a good crutch to have. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was in distribution for roofing for the first 15 years of my career. I'm coming up on my 27th year now, which is crazy to even imagine, but I was in distribution for the first 15. I drove a truck. I used to roof load houses, and I got to go out and I'd get to meet all these different homeowners. And I never was doing any sales. I was just knocking on their door to say, hey, we're going to pull the truck up, put some shingles on, be on our way. But all those reps, getting to talk to all these different people and getting to make jokes and kind of just be myself really kind of led me into it. And what happened with me is I got an opportunity to move to Charlotte, North Carolina, and open a roofing supply company with the company that I was with in Ohio. And I did it for a few years. It was all right, but I was stuck in an office, and I'm kind of not an office type guy. I've got a lot of energy, and I like to just be out and about and go see people and talk to them. And one day I just finally was like, you know what? This isn't me. I don't really like this. It's not fun. I had no passion whatsoever. I was at the point where in 2010, I hated waking up in the morning because I knew I had to go to work. And I was working, 90 plus hours a week. I was trying to build a independent distribution company. Basically, I shouldn't say on my own. There were people that were working there, but I was the guy that came in at 3:30 every morning and got the trucks loaded. I was the guy who was out doing the deliveries at 7:00 at night that same day. And a lot of this stuff in between. And it just drove me insane. I end up in Texas. This was in 2010. And I just randomly ran into a guy in College Station, Texas that owned a roofing company, started a conversation like I do with random people all over the place. And next thing you know, Ken, I'm relocating from Charlotte at my own expense halfway across the country to come sell roofs for a guy that I knew for like 5 minutes. And you talk about going all in on yourself and saying, hey, you know what? I don't like what I'm doing, but I'm going to find something that I love. I went in and immediately I kind of knew this was going to be my thing because we'd go out and talk to the homeowners and I'd get them laughing. And I didn't really understand the whole concept at that point. My big thing was, I know everything about these shingles. I know all the technical specs and I know how this works. And I can explain to you how they make these things. And I started off, we'll use the analogy. I was swinging for the fences, but dude, I was striking out constantly.
Right.
People did not care. I was overanalyzing. I was overthinking it, talking too much. And I almost got out of the roofing industry. I went to a storm in Amarillo, Texas in 2010-ish, 2011 maybe. And I had a terrible, terrible run. I came back and I had $10 to my name. And I was like, dude, I'm done. I can't do this. I just can't do it. I want to do it, but I don't have the skills. Right. So I ended up going back to Ohio and I started working for the supply company again. And you want to talk about defeat and you want to talk about feeling low. I left something years earlier to go and ascend to the top. And after all this work, I ended up at the same place I started. And it sucked. I was driving a truck and I like being around people, but I knew this isn't me.
Right.
I started doing a little bit of sales training and I started understanding the fact that nobody really cares about the number of nails you're putting in or any of that stuff. And then I started realizing every time I talk to someone, I get them laughing on the front end and then I lose them because I just go too deep into it. Right. So I stopped doing that and I started having success. And after I came back from Ohio, I went to work for the same company and I said, look, I crapped the bed the first time. If y'all would consider letting me come back and try this again, I promise I'm going to be better because I've done the work. I understand what I'm doing. I took a couple of Grant Cardone classes and it showed me, okay, this is where you're wrong. And I sold a roof the first day. And from there, I just kind of took off. I was the top salesman the next year. I did a couple years of $1 million+ in sales. And I got to the point where I was really, at the top of my game, but true to form, I'm like you, personal development is my thing. I kind of capped out and I couldn't go any higher with that particular company. So it was like, well, I want to do something more. I got an opportunity to do this company here in San Antonio, and we literally bought a roofing company that was out of business. And I'd never been to San Antonio before in my life until the day I got here to open this back up and resurrect a dead company. And I started teaching my sales guys the things that I knew. And they started going out and having some success. And I was hiring people with no background in roofing and just teaching them exactly what you said. Yeah, you guys that have no preconceived notions. They have no bad habits. And I started seeing these guys succeed. And I'll never forget when I realized my gift is actually teaching this is when my first sales guy called me on a Saturday at 8 p.m. And he was ecstatic. He's like, Chuck, I just got this deal. This lady called me and she was trying to tell me she was going to go with a different company. And I stayed on the phone with her for 45 minutes and I convinced her that we're the answer. We need to go over and sign the deal tomorrow. And you could just feel the energy in his voice, right? So to me, that sparked me. And I was like, all right, we got this. And from that point forward, I made it a point to train all of my guys individually. But the biggest thing I always tell them is do what separates you from the pack. Like you say, be real. You don't want to just be a scripted sales rep. I'd give them a little book and I'd say, look, you're going to get to use that book for the first 3 or 4 times, but then that book is going away. You need to do this yourself. And I love when people say, yeah, but I don't know anything about roofing and I don't know anything about how the shingles are done. Nobody cares, right? And I think that's the biggest point is if you just go in there and be yourself, it doesn't matter what you're selling. It doesn't matter at all, quite frankly. You're going to be successful if people like you. If you're not kind of a schmucky dude or you're not one of those people that just goes in and has no personality, people are going to love you. And for the rest of my life, I'm going to continue training people just based on that. I love it and it's fun. And I know I just kind of went off course just a little bit here from our conversation, but it's exciting to me. And I love what you're saying. I love the fact that you started off teaching children. And like you say, that is very, very valuable. There's probably nothing more valuable. There's no roofing sale that's ever going to match a 10 or 12 or 15-year-old kid that you've impacted that comes back and says, hey, you know what, coach? I was going to do something stupid, but because of you, I'm going to do something right. And taking those principles and then bringing them over to roofing, I do want to ask, when you started working with Hunter, you get into roofing, absolutely no preconceived notion about what this industry is whatsoever. Tell me a little bit about your early days in roofing, because a lot of people that I talk to get into it and they're like, well, it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. When you got into it, was it basically what you were thinking it was going to be? Or was there some massive like, wow, this is bigger than I thought, or this is going to be easy? What was your mindset?
Well, I think I came at it differently because when you get older and you've got a lot of life behind you, it takes a lot more to rattle you and to kind of, you're more receptive to change and to, or I am, where I wanted it to be different. I wanted it to be a challenge and it was. And I do think, well, I'll tell you what happened when I interviewed with Hunter. I come back up there and I say, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I took a couple of days to think about it. That's another thing you learn with time.
Absolutely. Never jump right in.
Yeah. So I came back in and I said, yeah, man, I'm ready to roll. Let's do this. Well, then instantly he started propping me up like, man, and the whole team, like the leadership guys started off right off the bat. They're like, man, Ken's going to kill it. He's going to absolutely kill it. Well, at the time they had about a 24-year-old sales manager. And when you're younger, I've been there too, myself. And it's like, man, who's this guy? He ain't sold one roof. So you kind of feel this energy and I let it breathe, man. I'm not, I'm past trying to prove myself and, try to say who can piss further. I don't care about all that stuff. So, but the day came, that we were going to go out and I was going to, kind of wing him out, watch him knock some doors. And, we go out there. It's in January. It's low to mid 30s, probably with the breeze blowing. And we go down this cul-de-sac. We both get out together. He knocks on the door. Nobody comes to the door. And we go to walk across, and he jumps in the truck to move the truck up. And he rolls down his window. I'm standing out there in the yard, and he says, "Hey man, I got to go to do a inspection at a church. I got to meet an adjuster. I'll be back in about an hour. Just go ahead and knock these on this street." Well, Chuck, I didn't know. I didn't have a clue what I was going to say. What I was like, I had no clue. But that arrogance that I have of just confidence, I should say, was like, well, this young kid ain't going to show me up, dude. I'm going to go knock on these doors. So I go up, and I literally have no clue what I'm going to say. So I knock on the first door, and it's amazing, even with the experience that I had and in life and sales, in that minute that as I'm just raising my hand and knock on the door, everything hits me at once. Like, dude, you are 48, 49 years old. You don't know what the hell you're doing. You don't know anything about roofing. You told your wife you were going to crush it and just trust me. You turned down, pretty good jobs to do this. And now you're out here in 30-something degree weather, don't know what the hell you're going to say, and this door's about to open. And you got a whole team back there saying, oh man, half of them are saying, man, he's going to crush it. And the other half don't want me to crush it because they're jealous of me before I even got anything done, because of what's being said. I'm kind of like the first round draft pick that comes in that won the Heisman, and everybody's like, you ain't done shit in this league, dude. Like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like I've got that pressure too. And all this hits me, Chuck, in the matter of like 20 seconds, man. And then the door opens, and I am so freaking nervous. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't even look at the guy. He had a Steelers flag in his right there beside his porch, right off. It's like a porch. You just, it's kind of almost level with the ground. And there's a little Steelers flag right there in his little garden. And I turned and pointed, and I said, so you're a Steelers fan, huh? And I just pointed at the flag and didn't even look back at him. Like I was just waiting on him to say something. And then I goes, yeah, man, I'm from Pittsburgh. So I said, okay, cool. So we just talked about Pittsburgh for 20 minutes, the Steelers and everything. And finally he's like, dude, man, I enjoyed talking to you about the Steelers, but man, why are you here? and at this time, like I so did not care about selling anything. I didn't even know what to sell or how to, like, I didn't know what to do. All I knew was to just talk to this dude and let's just shoot the crap or whatever. So literally in this amount of time, this is what I said, man, we're just out seeing if insurance will pay for people's roofs. So are you going to go to a game this year? Like literally I gave it in like a 2.5 seconds. So we talked a little bit more, and then he leans out and looks down the street both ways. And he goes, man, you don't have a truck or nothing? I said, oh man, it's the first time it hit me. I don't even have a ladder. Like I have nothing to even get on the guy's roof. So I said, man, we got to wait for the guy to get back. And, so at that point, I tried to go back in the Steeler talking. He said, man, I got a ladder out back if you want to use it. I said, all right, man, you talked me into it. So he taught me into doing an inspection, and I get up there and I don't even know what I'm looking at, man. And I said, yeah, it looks messed up. I came down, he answered the door. He says, well, what you got? And I said, man, it looks messed up. He said, what do we do? I said, I have no idea. We got to wait on the guy to get back. So like literally that was my first thing. And really when I look back at it, when I started building out my course, it's be real, relate, educate, ask, and listen. Right. And the relate is all I knew how to do. Like I had no information. I couldn't set myself I couldn't educate him on anything. I couldn't frame myself as an expert in any kind of way. I didn't know what questions to ask or anything. All I did was talk to the guy about Steelers football. And when the guy came back, I'm still at the same house. I'm sure he thought I was, a moron, and he was laughing. And I said, man, I didn't even know the terminology. I said, hey man, he wants to sign up. Like, I don't even know how to express it. And so that turned into a couple others that were sitting on checks in that neighborhood that just didn't like any of the guys that came through. They were just scared because it's a bunch of fast talking 25-year-olds that are just trying to jump from house to house to house, and people get that energy and they just don't trust you. And they trusted me. And the reason I coach a thing called a sales triangle. You have to close a triangle before you go in for a close. And the triangle is establish trust, value, and urgency. And everything that you get as a negative, any kind of a feedback or what you would call an objection, is because you've not established one of those three things. And the most important and the foundation of all of it is trust. So how do you establish trust, man? So I'm very, very good at that. and they don't have to trust that I know everything. They have to trust that I am the resource that can find out everything. And so that's why I've always been successful at whatever sales endeavors I took on.
I love that. Now, let me ask you an honest question. What if you knock on the first door and the guy's got, a Ravens flag or something like that? Are you going to try to, go that route, or, look for something else like, oh, hey, man, I love those petunias over there. I think it was a sign from God that the guy was a Steelers fan.
Yeah.
And that was probably that was the one thing that was needed at that moment. And I absolutely love that, because that's all it is. You become a likable guy. And I'm 46 myself, and I've been doing this for more than half my life. Mm-hmm. And I tell the younger guys that I work with now, look, the reality of the matter is I used to hate the guys that were in their 40s because they would always beat me. And I always thought, I'm better than those old guys, and I'm better than them, and I'm more energetic and yada, yada. It takes a while to build trust with people and to become a trustworthy type person in the eyes of complete strangers. And whether or not we want to admit it, I think age is one of the most valuable assets that we have as we continue along. And I tell the guys now, if I'm competing against a 20-year-old or a 25, I'm probably going to beat you guys, because I've just spent my entire life getting beat up. And I'm at the point now where I can say, look, still standing. I'm still here doing it. And I love what I do. And it's funny that you say that, because one of the roofs I sold over in College Station, Texas, one of the first ones after I really started getting a little confidence about me, I walk up to this guy's house and we start talking and just shooting the breeze. Like you said, we're talking for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And he says, hey, are you an A&M fan? And I'm like, oh, no, don't try and pin that on me. I'm a Buckeye fan from Ohio. And he's like, oh no, I don't think this is going to work, bro. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes into his garage and he says, follow me. And this guy's got a garage that is just straight up Michigan, everything. And it's like, oh, dude, I said, nobody in the neighborhood told me that you lived here. He's like, I wouldn't have even knocked on your door because, whatever, you're going to want to throw me out, right? And he's like, well, no. He's like, you're a pretty likable guy for a Buckeye. And I just made a joke. I said, look, let's just be honest. If it weren't for Ohio State, you wouldn't be here at Texas A&M. You'd still be at Michigan. And I was like, because we were putting the whooping on him every year at that point. And he started laughing. And it was like, what? I like you. Let's do this roof. We signed up right there on the spot, like you said, and everything started moving from that. But it's just finding relatable topics. It's just being a regular person. Mm-hmm. It's a nerve-filled situation. Like you say, you're about to knock on a stranger's door. I got yelled at by an old lady today knocking on a door. So I've been there and I understand that. But like you said, that everything hits you at once and it's like, oh my God, then the door opens and you have to just kind of wing it and make sure you're good. But what a rewarding feeling when you realize that's all you got to do. You just have to be cool, and you just have to be someone that these guys can trust and like and know, and everything else seems to take care of itself.
Well, it was the same with every other industry I'd been in. In the beginning, you put a little bit more pressure on yourself because it is stepping into something new. But then once you get to the top of enough of the different industries, it's like you realize, man, this is all the same thing, bro. It's all just building relationships, educating people, asking the right questions, and learn to listen. Like literally the fact that I was always saying I just be real with people was crazy how that acronym just kind of came to me so easily through the life's experiences that I'd had. So it's kind of like if you watch a professional football player and they go out there for like a NBA or like a charity basketball game or something, like because they're really, really good at something else, they just have this underlying confidence in this area as well. You know what I mean? And like, I never, outside of that 20 seconds, I don't think I felt the same pressure as before, but I felt some pressure. And to be honest with you, I think I yearn for that. Like I would get at the top of industries and then just get bored with it and leave. Like I don't know that I could have done, now at this age, what I'm doing now, I could see myself doing this for the rest of my, my working years, but because I feel like I'm so much in my purpose. And I started off with 12 modules to coach. And now I have 26, plus I have all the leadership ones and the personal, like, it just keeps growing. So, I can keep pouring into it, but but the reality is, man, like um, I would just hit walls where I just like, okay, I'm good at this. Now what? Like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life, whatever it was, whatever type of sales it was. It's like, okay, now what? It just, something tells you that you're not in the right place, man. And you just have to follow that. And for me, people look at, well, you didn't stay there, but for like 2.5 years. It's like, that's because like, it's hard to tell
Yeah, I
people that you
knew.
just
Why
get
waste your
bored.
time, right?
What am I here to prove, bro? Like, I'm good. Like, I made the money that you can make here. I learned the lessons. And I'm just ready for a new challenge. And I think part of that too goes back to, like you said before, God probably put that Steelers flag there to make this a transition that would be, worthy for me. If it was something else, I couldn't really relate. It would have been a little tougher. But the reality is, like, I feel like my whole life was that, growing up. I came up in some rough areas. My parents didn't make very good decisions. We got evicted a lot. So I was always the minority where I was at. I was always a new kid in school. I was always a new kid on the bus, new kid in the neighborhood. And with that, you always have to carry yourself with a certain confidence. So that was ingrained in me, early on. And then always being the new guy, you have to find ways to relate to people quickly. You know what I mean? So for me, sports was always the foundation. If I showed up and I could ball, then that's how I fit in with everybody. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Sometimes you had to prove that you could throw hands, whatever it might be, whatever, hopefully we settle this on a basketball court, but we'll do it however you want to. But the point was, like, you just learned to have this confidence. So whatever was going to happen at that door, I knew it wasn't going to be anything that was going to derail me. It was just going to be the first step of many steps. And then surely, that it helped with that it was something like that I could relate to. But I'd found myself in those situations throughout my entire adult life, of just being in a situation. Okay, I got to figure this out right now, real quick, and we got to do this, and I'm blessed in the fact that I did come up the way I did, where I was constantly having to kind of become a chameleon and fit in different areas. And that's what sales is, man. It's just a lot of being a chameleon and adjusting to the room. And so I don't care who answers the door, brother.
I'm with you on that. And I love that mindset, because it does take a while to get to that point in life. But once you get there and it's like, you know what, I'm good no matter what I do. And I teach these guys that, hey, roofing sales is awesome. You can make a ton of money. You get a lot of freedom. But if you don't like doing roofing sales, you can apply these lessons in literally anything and you'll be successful. And to me, I think that's the coolest part about doing the sales training. And before we really dive into the sales training, I do want to ask, how many years did you do roofing sales before you decided this is cool, but I've got a bigger calling?
About 2.5 years. I had a little break in there. Went and worked with Hunter over with Revolt, and with a small breakaway thing called Fueled. It was like Revolt, but it was for local business owners. So I got to work with a lot of entrepreneurs. Do you know Ammon McKinley?
Not personally.
Okay, you've heard of him? Have you heard of Ammon?
Yep.
Me and Ammon was working there at Fueled. So man, that was such a great experience, and I knew early on I wasn't going to stay there. Didn't even know if that whole setup was going to work, because it was a new idea, new concept that Hunter had. But it really didn't matter, because, man, the people that I met, the entrepreneurs that were at various stages, and to help oversee meetings where they'd get together on Tuesdays, and just the conversations amongst people that think along those lines, just to plug into that ecosystem, man, was very valuable. And part of the reason why, it's just there's a guy, I don't know if you know Myron Golden.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Myron says all the time that all work works. It either works for you or it works on you. And so those situations that I wasn't necessarily in my really my overall purpose and my end game, that was still working on me, and I needed all those steps to get to where I'm at now today. So, I don't even remember what the question was. Did we cover
how long you did roofing sales? Yeah. And that's an awesome answer to that. And it leads us into the next segment of our show, which is what you're doing now. You say, you know, back in March, you decided to go all in with it. Tell me a little bit about the initial stages of getting started as a coach, a sales trainer, some of the things that you had to go through to get your stuff developed, to get your name out there. You know, roofing is a very cynical industry. There are a lot of guys that get called fake gurus and stuff like that. And a lot of times people point and say, well, you know, this dude's only been doing roofing sales for 2 years. So why should I listen to him? Right. Did you have to deal with anything like that in your early days? Or was it just something where it's like, dude, this guy knows what he's doing. And it comes across perfectly to me, but I'm one of the smarter guys in the industry, I think.
Well, let's go back to see my experiences. My experiences, I'm a new white kid getting off the bus, walking through the hallway. You have an assumption of, you know, who I am and how I'll carry myself. So then you approach me in a certain way, and then you find out real quickly that ain't me, brother. Like, I'm not the one. So even though I might not be from here, I still know how to walk the walk, and I can talk the talk. So my thing was, I'm not going to fail at anything I do. If I put my mind to it, it's going to happen. That's just always been my mindset. And so if I was to pay attention to the people that thought that I couldn't do this or couldn't do that, I mean, I went to a little school in Holly Hill, South Carolina, which is a little bit south of Columbia. It's where South Carolina State, which is HBCU school, is. And so little Holly Hill, South Carolina, right outside of Orangeburg. And I was the first white kid in 9 years. They had to go back in all the yearbooks to find out the last white kid that made a basketball or football team there. And I made both, and I was starting as a sophomore in varsity. And so my point is that my life experiences have taught me not to worry about what people are going to say. If they're so defensive because of how long I've been doing something, you know, I have to wonder, you know, man, why are you worried about me, bro? Like,
exactly. I mean? There's other issues to be dealt with on your side at that point. And, you know,
the people that I serve, the people that I coach, once we have a discovery call and we actually get to talking about what I talk about during our onboarding process, if we choose to work together, they find out quickly, man, there's layers to this, man. Grant Cardone may not have ever sold a roof either. But if Grant Cardone walked in there and started talking about selling roofs, people would listen to him. Why? Not because of his knowledge about how many nails go into a shingle to maintain the warranty, like, or how to get, you know, somebody to overturn the insurance claim. Yeah, those are learnable things that you can learn very quickly. It's not like it's some secret sauce that, you know, nobody knows. I mean, you can gather that information. But what sales is Grant Cardone, better than most people, would be able to connect with a client and get them to make a decision that's best for them. And he would do that by establishing trust and separating himself from everybody else that they talk to. That's what I coach. Roofing just happens to be the sport that I play that shows off my athleticism.
I love that. That's tremendous. And there's plenty of opportunities here because I think that it's something that our industry does need dire. You know, like we talked earlier, there are a lot of people that have the same story you do. Like the guy threw me out in the middle of a field and said, go knock doors. I'll be back in 2 or 3 hours. And if you're not confident in yourself, you might be sitting on the curb when he comes back crying and saying, dude, you know, I just can't do this. So having that confidence and being able to go up there and say, look, I don't even know the answer, but I know that I'm the guy that you need to have getting the answers for you. And I know that I'm the best guy to get them. And I know that the team I'm with is going to do it right. And I absolutely love that mindset. So I can see where, you know, if I called you and said, hey, Ken, you know, tell me a little bit about your program, I'd buy into it immediately just based on our conversation. How many companies are you working with at this point in your 9 months into your full-time endeavor? Yeah. How many companies are you working with currently?
Currently, I've got 9 contracted. Everybody's either on a 6-month or a 1-year contract.
Nice.
And so what I do is I get on. I don't want to work with anyone that is. And my discovery call usually takes an hour to hour and 15 minutes. I ask a lot of questions. I really know everything about your company, why you're in business, what are your core values, what do you stand for? You know, I have a lot of very in-depth questions because I need to know not only, I'm going to tell you at the end what I do and what I bring to the table, but the reality is we're creating a partnership. And again, to use another analogy back to the sports, if I coach a small school and you offer me to come coach a bigger school, a bigger program, If I come to check out your program, decide if I want to, it's not an automatic that I'm going to come and want to coach there. Like, because I didn't, man, how hard are these kids working? I'm gonna go over to the strength trainer and say, pull their files. I want to see when guys are graduating, how have they increased in their bench, their squat, their deadlifts? Like, are they working? Because I can attach myself to bad athletes and bad leadership inside of an organization. And then, 3 years later, I'm getting fired. And it looks like I was the one that didn't know what I was doing. So I'm only going to work with people that I'm in alignment with, that understand the importance of doing all the small things. I tell guys early on, say, man, how many of y'all watch Karate Kid? And most people have seen the original Karate Kid. And I say, okay, well, there's going to be times during this that you're going to be painting fences and sanding floors, and you're not going to know what the hell this has to do with sales. But trust the process. And with leadership, I'll kind of get into the weeds a little bit more on telling them, here's some of the things we do, and this is my approach, and this is why I teach it. But that's, so we get on these calls, and I always preface it by saying, hey man, we're not going to make any decisions to work together or not, on this call. This is simply, an introduction. You tell me about you, I tell you about me. We'll set another appointment. I've not had anybody that got off that appointment that didn't want to go ahead and sign up then. Now, to my word, I always push it back, and then I need to decide. And honestly, I've turned down working with as many companies as I've agreed to work with, because they don't have things in place. They're really just out for a cash grab. Man, I'm into developing people. I don't want to just make you where you can go sell more roofs. I want you to be a better husband. I want you to be a better father. I want you to be a better server of your community. I want more than that for you. So if there's an alignment there from the ownership, and then I feel like it's a good thing, then we'll move forward. But we get into the call. And then once we establish it, I want to come to you first. So the kickoff to start this relationship is I'm going to come to you. And I'm going to be there for 2 days. The first day is personal development. We're not even going to talk about roofs. I could care less about roofs. We're talking about you. And we've got some exercises that we do. They're pretty intentional. And then from there, we kind of set it.
Uh-oh.
What happened?
We're good. I just hit the pause button when the internet stopped working. So it was like, none of that just happened. That just happened.
Okay.
I don't know exactly where you're at, and I hope you do, but we were getting into it good, and the old internet wanted to be a little bit of a obstacle for us. But when it plays, this will be seamless. It's almost like nobody will know what just happened, other than the fact that we're now talking about something totally different than we were literally 3 seconds ago. But
Right.
I respect that, and I appreciate it, because, like you say, it's the quality of the people that you're working with is the most important thing. When you're putting yourself out there, you want to work with the guys that are going to do the work. It doesn't have to be the most talented people, but it has to be the ones that are willing to invest in it, that are willing to do the work for themselves to get better every day. And there's a lot of those in our industry. I love the fact that you've turned down as many as you've worked with, because I tell everybody, you've got to do that. It's the same thing with homeowners. I mean, every homeowner is not going to be a good fit for you. And if you try to get every single one of them, you're going to end up in despair. You're going to hate what you're doing, because there's going to be the bad ones that drag you down. And it's just, that's just the way it goes. So I definitely appreciate that.
Well, that's day one. The second day we jump in and do actual sales training. I coach a thing called the 8 Mile technique, which if you saw the movie 8 Mile, then you understand at the end of that, there was a rap battle. And Eminem knew everything that the guy was going to say about him. So he went ahead and said it first and took it all the way, and then said, here's the mic, tell them something they don't know about me. And basically the way I approach the 8 Mile technique on the door knock is phenomenal how that works out, man. It's a lot of people have come back, and the vast majority of the reports that come back to me from people that I've coached have said that they got on twice as many roofs as they normally get for the inspection, and their close percentage went up tremendously as well. So, I don't sit there and make all these bold claims like you'll sell 90% more. Like, dude, like you still got to do the work, and everything.
It's still on you. I'll show you what to do,
still
but you got to do it.
And the reality is this: Alabama's running the same plays they ran last year, but there's different leadership. There's a different voice at the top. When I was coaching high school ball, there was a program that popped up that became nationally known, Burns High School. And Burns went up there and beat Moeller on ESPN. They played Moeller High School up in Ohio. They played
Cincinnati. Yep.
Yeah, they played teams out in what's it, Saint something out there in LA. They played the top schools that you've heard around from all across the country, and we're beating them. And I mean, they're literally 40 minutes from my doorstep. And so everybody's like, man, what is Burns doing, dude? Like, it's crazy. And they're running the same thing. I knew their offensive coordinator. The difference of how they were beating everybody was their discipline and their strength coach. Their strength coach was a guy named Coach Schrock. Coach Schrock was a strength coach for the Miami Dolphins. He was a drill sergeant in the Marines before that. And he retired, and his wife was from that area. So they moved there, and he's too busybody to just sit around. So he walked into the high school, volunteered his services. Hey man, I just want to come coach kids in strength training. And 3 years later, they win 6 out of the next 7 state championships. They're playing 5 games on ESPN. Like, it's the preparation, it's the attention to detail, man. The only thing that separates me and anybody else that's standing in front of a client, the only difference in me and them is the things that I say or things I don't say. That's the separator. So when you look at a receiver, there's really good receivers and there's guys that barely get on the field. The guy that barely get on the field might be a guy that, but like numbers wise, if you were out there just measuring, jumping, running, and all that stuff, man, it's like, man, why is that guy not playing? Because he don't know how to run a route. And to me, I think that the artwork, the art that you paint when you run a pass route is kind of like what you do whenever you are standing there and you knock on the door. It's the beginning of the play. Depending on what the defense does and how they defend you is going to depend on how you release and how you stem the route and how you end up at your landing point where you're supposed to be. The landing point where we're supposed to be is to close a deal. So how do I creatively and artistically do that? If you go back and watch Antonio Brown run routes, like, dude, there's no way they drew it up that way. Like, he's just doing too many things, bro. But it was just creativity. Now, is that a coachable thing? No, it's not necessarily coachable, but the concepts are coachable. And so I coach you the concepts of why the things that you say are hurting you. I never tell anybody that we're going to give a free roof inspection. I will say this, and you finish this for me. Nothing in life is what?
Nothing in life is free.
It's free. Everybody, if I said that in front of a stadium of 70,000 people, they would all say free at the same time. So here's what we just did. We just created a doubt seed in that person's mind that they feel like right off the bat, because you use the word free, you're trying to sell something, because everything else that they've been told was free, there was a pitch at the end of it, or there was some little hook on the back of it. So why use that terminology? Why plant that seed? You're a total stranger to them. So you're starting off behind the 8 ball. So, and also, how many people do free roof inspections, and roof is all you look at? If you're in the storm market, especially, you're checking gutters, downspouts, siding, window wrap, window screens, HVAC units, decks, you name it, man. You're looking for hail and storm damage, right? So you're inspecting a lot more than the roof. So why make yourself seem so small and insignificant? Free roof inspection is, there's no value. You never present price before value. Well, what's your price? Free. How valuable does free sound? It doesn't. So now you just wrecked yourself by just using that terminology. What I say is complimentary property inspection. Also attach a value to it. It's a 35-point complimentary property inspection. Which sounds more valuable?
Yep. And you know what? Thank you for saying that. I've been saying this for years, and a lot of people don't believe me. The free inspection thing is not a good hook at all. And I do the same thing. I'm here to do a complimentary assessment. I've got a 16-point assessment I'm going to do. I'm going to walk around and look at everything. It's complimentary. And that sounds a heck of a lot nicer. Everybody loves a compliment and everybody loves something like that.
Right.
But when you go up to the door and say, we're just doing free inspections and, all you'll have to pay is this. And if the insurance pays it, we'll just deal with whatever. And you don't really create any value. You don't separate yourself. And I tell people, if you're not the first one on the door, you might as well put a bag over your head if that's what you're going to say, because everybody else is saying the exact same thing. And you can't separate from the pack in any way because you're just in there. You're just vanilla. You're all coming with the same exact thing. And so many people are just taught to say, we're here to do free inspections. Right. And to me, it's a scarcity mindset way of training. And if you look at the other side and say, you know what? People are willing to pay for quality. People are willing to pay for the better things. They're willing to pay for the more educated people, the more professional. Why not just frame yourself as that from the beginning and not be another one of those, lollipop face guys with a giant sucker on it and just, hey, we're here today to do a free inspection. Would you like a free inspection? Because people never get back to you on that. And I really love that concept because it is the absolute truth. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the other things you've got going on. I told you we'd try to do about an hour. Do you still have a little bit of time left
we're good.
Okay, cool. Because we're up at the hour already. We've been chatting for an hour already, my man. This is great. You get into this, you start really building your systems out for your training. You start bringing on clients. You start having some, a little bit of recognition in the industry. People are starting to realize, hey man, this guy Ken, he knows what's up, man. He's making things happen for people. And it leads to you getting invited to go speak at one of the biggest events in the industry, which now that I know your history with Hunter Ballou, it makes a little bit more sense to me. But I want to ask you about that. When you just kind of got started at this, you're 6 months into your brand new endeavor, you're working hard, you're making it happen. All of a sudden it's like, hey, Ken, why don't you come speak on stage at RoofCon in front of our entire industry? Tell me a little bit about that. Was that something that you were expecting? Is that something you were prepared for? How did you react?
No, I knew I had a breakout session, and then I was going to speak over at the another little area that they had speakers kind of coming through on a regular basis, more like an open floor thing. And so I knew I had two different kind of topics I was going to work on. And then the day, maybe 2 days before I left to go down to Orlando, and I was like, hey, man, I want you to be keynote right there at the end, too. It wasn't like it was day one, event. Like 2:00. It's like I'm two people from I'm C team. There's a JV and then there's a varsity. Jesse Isler was about maybe an hour after me. So I was like, wow, okay. And man, to be honest with you, it goes back to the way I think the Lord provides you with what you need for the moment. And I wasn't stressed. I don't really get stressed about stuff like that as much, but I want to serve. I want to impact people the best that I can. So like, it's not about me being nervous. I'm going to mess up. I've messed up a million things in my life. I could care less. It's more, am I going to make an impact on these people who's going to sit there and give me that time? And so all the way up until the night before, I thought I'd kind of went through all my slides and all my different content to where I've already been coaching teams before I went there. And so I'm pulling a lot of different stuff and okay, I can talk about this and that. And the night before I just lay there in bed and I just scrapped the whole thing. I said, no, I'm not, I got a whole nother, something else I want to do. And so getting the opportunity to jump up there and tell a couple of stories, man, was powerful. I had also read a book by John Maxwell, The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. And in one of those, he talked about public speaking. And he just said that, man, it's not about you. Like it's bigger than you. Don't be nervous. Just really focus on delivering a message that they're going to get something out of. And I actually mentioned that at the beginning when I first walked up on stage, and it really did help me a lot to tell that story and a couple of stories actually. But man, it was a great opportunity. I got a lot of great feedback from it. It was my first time, so I'll get better. But yeah, it's I think things happen in times, man. Like I know people think, well, he's only been doing this for that long or this long or whatever. Dude, it doesn't matter. I've been in sales my entire adult life. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've done it. Like Michael Jordan, when he got on that bus to ride out to the suburbs in Alabama to go play baseball, dude, he was already a professional athlete. He had won championships in another sport. Like, he's not coming in this with the same mindset as everybody else on that bus. And that's the way I felt like I came into the roofing industry. And as I stepped on that stage, I felt the same way. Like I feel like I've been, I love Mike. I mean, you can see it over my shoulder there. I got a couple of Mike and Kobe and,
you're a sports fan. There's no denying that. I love it.
Those guys are just phenomenal, the mindset. So, I just knew that I had to get up there, and everything had built up to that moment. And then there'll be another moment that everything will build up to the next one, man. And that's what I've seen throughout my life, man.
That's awesome. And I'll tell you, it's really cool to see the I don't even know what to say, the progression as you're moving forward with this. I have no doubt you're going to be one of the most successful guys in our industry with what you're doing, because it is different and it's not a cookie cutter approach that everybody can do. You're looking for the elites, you're working with the best people who are willing to invest in themselves, and those always get the best results. So to me, it's a no-brainer that Be Real is going to be at the top of this pile before too long. You're already pretty much up towards the top as it is in such a short time. So let me ask you this. Moving forward, you've been doing this for 9 months. You said, in March, you decided, hey, I'm going all in with it. This is going to be my primary thing. Where do you see yourself going, 5-10 years down the road? What do you see this becoming?
Well, going back to where we were before our internet stopped working, once I do the live kickoff with everybody, then we get on calls, and we have 4 calls a month, 1 per week. The weeks 1 and 3, I meet with the leadership team, and weeks 2 and 4, I meet with the sales team.
Nice.
So we're going to do that for 6 months or a year, depending on how we work it out. And then, but we've already got the established relationship from when I came to your place for a couple of days. Right. And so because of that day one, Chuck, I've got more of a personal relationship with everybody. We've got into the weeds a little bit about personal lives and goals and aspirations and things of that nature. So now, because I have that intel, then when I get out here into these Zoom calls, I'm going to lean on you a little bit more, and you're going to know that it's coming from love, and I'm going to hold you accountable to the things that we talk about and the goals that you set for you and your family. And so it creates a better opportunity for me to better lead you, see what your personality is. Coach T and a lot of other coaches say this, man, I don't coach everybody the same, but I coach everybody fair. And so I've got to establish those relationships. And then from there, man, we push, man, we go hard. I call you out, and we get there. But on the positive side of that, there's a company that I just went and did a live kickoff with the end of last month. And I've got a guy there that had not spoke to his dad in 10 years that just spent Thanksgiving with him because of the conversations that we had and the exercises that we executed while I was on there on site. I've got a woman that's now having her kids say their prayers every night as they sit there, and she reads to them every night. I've got 4 or 5 people that are reading books, 2 or 3 chapters a night. They have accountability partners that they have to check in with daily, and they have to send me a video telling me each week how their trek, I call it a trek, how their trek is going and how their partner's doing. And there is like significant growth. Man, I want you to sell more roofs, bro. Of course I want you to sell more roofs. I can teach you the details of that. There's details of what we say and do that make a difference. And I tell people this all the time. Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson, those guys, they didn't need the triangle offense. Kobe Bryant didn't need the triangle offense to be Kobe Bryant. Like they were going to be, Mike was already dropping 63 on Boston in the Garden before Phil Jackson came along, right? Before Scottie Pippen came along. Mike was going to be Mike. But guys like Steve Kerr, they needed that. They needed a triangle offense. They needed a system. So whenever you coach a team, you got to coach all the way to the end of your bench. And I think that's what helped me the most with coaching young kids at various ages, because some of the kids I coached ended up going on playing major Division I ball. Some of the kids were just kids from church that, grew up and they're still in the church, like whatever, they work at the mill or something, who knows. But the point is, you have to learn how to be a master communicator. I got a story that I tell whenever I was working part-time in a grocery store during the day. I was working third shift. And I was early on just wanting to make as much money as I could. And I said, well, I can go work 20 hours at the grocery store. So I'm running a register and taking classes too. So I'm doing 3 things, and I got a 8-month-old baby. And so I'm wide open, man. And they asked me to cover for this guy that's in produce. It's a little bitty produce rack at his little store. And he goes, can you just come and work for an hour while I take my lunch break? And he gave me a little list of things to do. Well, I would clock out from the front end, clock in on produce time and go over there. And he said, uncap the bananas was on my list of things to do. Well, I uncapped the bananas. He comes back an hour later and commences to cussing me out and acting a fool. I said, dude, I don't know what the hell your problem is. He says, man, you just ruined these bananas. I don't know if you know how bananas come in. They come in the boxes and you have to take the top off, set them back inside the top, and then peel back that plastic because that's what accelerates them, ripening up. And so uncapping bananas, you do when they first get to the store and you crisscross them and just take it where that gas can get out, right? Well, he didn't explain that to me, Chuck. He said uncap the bananas. So when he got back, he had, 20 cases at 40 pounds each. He had 800 pounds of loose bananas that I'd cut them out and made them singles instead of bunches and put them back in their boxes and put the lid back on them and stacked them the way they were. I thought I did a phenomenal job, but who's going to buy a bunch of single bananas? He was furious, right? But that was my first lesson of understanding how to better communicate. And leadership quite often drops the ball in their communication of what the expectations are. And so like when you have a sales team and you say, well, just go at it, you drop them off in the field, like you said, man, I'm very specific about my coaching. When guys start sending me audio recordings of their door knocks and they send it back, and the very first thing that you say whenever somebody, let's change it for a second. You're walking into a restaurant behind me, and as I'm, going into the restaurant, I see you coming behind me, and I just pause my life for 2 seconds to hold the door long enough for you to grab the handle. What do you say to me? You say, thanks. Appreciate it, man. Yeah. If you knock on somebody's door, you're trespassing, you're interrupting their time, you're cutting off their life and the things that they're doing. And then they're taking the time to come and answer the door and give you the time of day, not only just to talk to you, but also to feed your family. They hold the pen that writes the checks that's going to put your kids in college. And the first thing out of your face better be thank you. It better be some sign of gratitude that they are giving you that time of day. And then they wonder why people get pissed at them at the door. The second thing is, what are you saying to them? Why are you there? If you say any of the red flag words, insurance, deductible, all this stuff, I don't care if you did build 18 houses in that neighborhood. If I can't see it from that door, that front door, you sound like a schmuck by even mentioning it because they don't believe you. Well, Miss Sally lives over here, in the back of the neighborhood. Like, why the hell would they know Miss Sally?
Right.
It might there might really be a Miss Sally. There might be. But if you don't pass their house from where they turn off the road to get to their driveway, they don't even know them. So why do you even say it? You sound like everybody else. So what I do is I have a very detailed way that I go about it. And it goes back to the details of which foot is forward whenever you're lined up as a receiver. Is your inside foot, your backside foot? If it's different every time, then they're going to pick it up and they're going to figure out what kind of route you're running. Or your hands up sometimes and down sometimes. If a guy comes to jam you, how are you going to get off of him if your hands are beside you? What are these details, man? And so I love getting into the details of sales and really kind of diving in on that. It's the little things that we say and don't say that are going to cause you success. Because again, the only difference between you and me and anybody else that gets into this is the things that we say and how we say them. And so as far as being the expert, man, obviously I know when I tell the story that I sold roofs and didn't know what I was doing, man, I am in no way taken away from the guys that are just absolute master roofers that are out there. And you could very well be one as long as you've been in it. I'm sure 1,000 times more about roofing than I do. And I push as hard as I can for guys to continue to learn everything about what they do to become that expert. But what I don't want them to do is think that that's going to be the separator, whether they can feed their family or not. I want people to have the confidence that even without that, until you can catch up and you can fill that cup up, just lean on your people skills. Everybody on this planet is only here as a result of a sale, because either your mama convinced your daddy or your daddy convinced your mama. Somebody convinced somebody of something, and here you sit. So if you're in a relationship, you had a kid, you got a job. The only reason you have this job is you sold them on believing that you were worth giving a job to. You already sold somebody something. So I don't take that as an excuse, man. That's a damn excuse. Oh, I'm not a salesman. Yes, the hell you are. The best salesmen out there are the ones that don't feel like they're salesmen. People don't want that out loud, upfront, obnoxious, like jerk. That's the reason I have to get out of some of the Facebook groups, man, because it's just such arrogance of how they deal with clients. And I'm like, dude, and I try to go in there and like give some like reasonable things that's going to help them, because hell, I want to see guys win. But then it's like, well, just, I don't care. I get 9 no's before I leave. Like, dude, you're a freaking butthole, dude. Like I don't ask for anything on the front end to where they have to say yes or no. If they're having to make a decision right off the bat before I give them value. So my thing is just try to establish as much value as I can, value, trust, and urgency. And I do that through my 8-mile technique. And what's crazy is I've taken that same approach into different industries, because I've coached fencing companies. I've worked with some real estate companies, car dealerships. So it's not just roofing. Be real applies to any kind of sales. And that same concept kind of goes across the board.
Absolutely. And man, I'll tell you what, this has been the most fun conversation, because you're speaking my language, and it's like, I wish there were more people that said the same things that I say to people. And now I just found a guy that's saying pretty much the same thing. So, it works. It's a tried and true method of just going out there and just being you. I was training a kid the other day, and I said, what makes you different than anybody else? Well, he's a high school football coach. He's coaching the number 1 or 2 rated quarterback in the country, and he's 26 years old. And I said, okay, well, what else? And it's, you live in Columbus, Ohio. This kid just signed with the Buckeyes. I hope you tell everybody that you're his coach,
Mm-hmm.
Give me an autograph and I'll walk around and tell everybody I'm his coach. Mm-hmm. And then he says, well, I also was a bull rider. And I'm like, dude, you better never talk about roofing to any of these people. You better have them just completely enamored with the fact that you coach the number 1 prospect in the country. You're a bull rider. You do all these other things, because nobody else is going to go to the door and say, hey, I'm a bull rider.
Yeah,
if that happens, then you can fall back on saying, well, I coach the best player in the country. And I guarantee nobody does bull riding and coaching the best guy in the country. So just be different, and you're more memorable that way. And I absolutely love that mindset. I love that you're teaching that to people. And before we wrap this up, I got a couple quick things I want to just fire at you. Number 1, the next big event for the roofing industry is going to be here in San Antonio. It's the IRE in February. Are you planning on being at the IRE?
When is it? February?
February 19th through 21st, I believe.
I mean, I'd like to be there. I'd like to see what opportunities are there.
We're going to do a golf outing. So I'm just going to throw that out there. If you show up for the IRE, we're going to go play golf. I'm not that good, but we'll have a great time. I can assure you of that. The number 2 question before I get to the final thing is, you're a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Mm-hmm. I've jokingly said, I grew up on the other side of the fence. We were never big Pittsburgh guys growing up in Ohio, but there's a great example of what we just talked about going on in Pittsburgh right now with your quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And you've got a veteran who's been to the top, who kind of got thrown out and discarded and kind of declared washed and all this stuff. And then you got this young kid who comes in, and he's got all the ability in the world. He just needs to kind of harness it and maybe learn a little bit to maybe slow down. And I love the dynamic that's going on right there. And I kind of wanted to get your take on that, because it kind of rolls right into what we were talking about. Do you think that with the Steelers, obviously, I think you probably are rooting for them to win the Super Bowl this year, and why not? They're playing great. But what do you think about that dynamic that's going on there with Justin Fields, who came out, started, did pretty well, and then he got sat on the bench because it was like, well, we got another guy who's maybe just a little bit better at throwing the deep ball, a little more calm and composed. And the way that Fields has approached it has been, and I say this because I'm a homer, I got Brutus Buckeye sitting right here listening to me, is that, he's been very humble about it. And he said, look, I went to Chicago and I thought I was pretty decent, but our team sucked. I got thrown out of Chicago, basically. I came over here, getting a second chance, working with one of the best coaches of all time. And I'm going to sit down and I'm going to be a team player. I'm going to learn all this stuff. Is that the kind of guy that you think at some point down the road is going to be a superstar in the league based on the fact that he's willing to take these lumps, even though he knows I'm probably good enough to be playing right now?
Man, a lot of that is on him personally and what all he's taken in. But everything that I see and from what I understand, I've still got some connections through my previous employer. I worked for Rydell, the football helmet company. So I've got some connections to people that are actually walk the building there and are pretty plugged in, and a couple other resources as well. And it just sounds like this kid just loves. He grew up a huge Russ Wilson fan. He's getting to play behind and just listen and learn from one of the top 10, 15 quarterbacks of the last 30, 35 years. And what people don't understand is, and I say this all the time, but Russ was actually right now, full transparency, my favorite quarterback right now is Josh Allen. I just think that I played quarterback, I coach quarterbacks. I just really, really break down everything about quarterback play. I think it's the hardest position to play in professional sports. I think the decisions the other day I was showing my girlfriend just on a play where Russ dropped back. It was against the Bengals. He dropped back. He was looking left. He came back to the right. He had to dip underneath. The rush got high on his outside shoulder. He dipped underneath it, broke out, and then pulled the ball up and threw it down the field. And it's like, you realize all that happened in 2.6 seconds. Like, what you have to do is you have to train your mind to process information at such a rate where your true character is going to just come out in that moment. So you can't, the reason Lamar Jackson, the reason that Justin Fields, the reason that Michael Vick were given the ball to play quarterback, because they were such good athletes. You just want them to have the ball in their hand every time. It wasn't because they made quickest decisions and try to get the ball out to somebody else. It was because we want him to have the ball. And nobody said anything, because a lot of great athletes at the high school level they basically cover up for really poor coaching, because you don't have to coach them. Just give them the ball and get out of the way, right? But then when you do that for your entire life, that just becomes your spots. Like if you're a leopard, that's just your spots, man. You can't not do that anymore. And then you get to a league where the separator between your speed and the average defensive end isn't that much. It is once you get outside of a 10-yard box, but inside that 10-yard box, man, you have no advantage really at that point. So now when you're having to make that decision in 2.5 seconds, you break down from, okay, let me make this read, that read, that read. Let me feel this pressure and react to it without looking at it. And then instead of relying on what I've always relied on, which is my legs, I have to use my mind to dissect and then deliver a catchable ball with the right speed, the right pace, the right angle, while finding all the people coming from different places, like safeties that might have broke early or corners that are dropping off. You thought they were a man and they're in zone. It's like, I don't care how good of an athlete you are. Like that is a mental, that's why I think that it's the hardest job that there is, because of the time that it takes. And Justin, as much as I love Justin was never developed to that level. And him sitting behind one that does it, one of the best of all time. He's one of the top 2 or 3 best all time of touchdown to interception ratio. He takes care of the ball, right? And so if he can really just dial in and he sits beside him in all the meetings, they talk on the sideline after every drive, like they're plugged in, man. And Justin has the potential to grow exponentially. And if you think about it, back in the early days, that's the way it used to be. Tom Brady just talked about this a couple of weeks back, made a big news about it. That guys are coming to the league and they're having to play so early, they're not developing. And then they just acquire bad habits and they just maintain that through, and they dummy down the entire league because of that. Russ is getting a chance. Justin is getting a chance to almost, even though he got that little flash, opportunity in Chicago, now he gets to go back and be like the rookie that gets to learn from the veteran for a few years. And if he does that and does it the right way, I think Justin could actually be one of the best, man. I know that's a long way to answer a question. I know, but
no, that's exactly what I was looking for. I love the way you broke that down and the way that you explained it. It's like, damn, that right there was high level explanation of a simple question that and I love that. That shows the kind of dedication and the kind of attention to detail that you possess, which is how you end up coaching 78 teams over 6 different sports.
Right.
You break into roofing and you instantly start doing well. You start training winners at the elite level in this industry and others. And the last thing I have to ask is probably the most important one of them all. I love to ask this question at the end of every episode. Let's just say that there's been 1 million people that have watched this episode, because I promise, I always joke and say 1 million people are going to watch this. You and I might be gone like 100 years before it happens, but 1 million people are going to watch this, and we're going to hope that they see it within the next year or two. Let's say someone's watching this right now and they're like, you know what, this guy Ken, he's got his shit together. I want to inquire about working with him. I think I've got the raw ability, or I've got the desire, maybe not the skills necessary yet. How do people get a hold of you to inquire about that initial call, to see if they're good, to see if it's a good fit with you? How do we get more people on board with Be Real?
Well, I mean, you can follow me on my social. I've not hired anybody to do my social media at this point. Everybody keeps saying I need to, so I'll be more consistent with putting content out. But Ken Younce, Be Real is my Facebook. I've got a regular one that says Ken Younce. That one's pretty much full. And it's got a lot of stuff about Steelers and me trash talking and whatever it might be. So that was probably not going to serve as well.
Unless you're a Steelers fan.
Yep. And low key, I'm also a Seminoles fan, and I just don't talk about that much right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I'd keep that one quiet.
We're on a little hiatus at the moment, but no, you go to BeRealSalesTraining.com. So that's about as easy as you can get, BeRealSalesTraining.com. And then you can look on there and there's a discovery call. You can just lock in a call with me. And we'll just jump on there and, man, just kind of check and see where you're at. But yeah, man, you asked me earlier where I want to be in 3 to 5 years. My next step is I feel like I'm going to max out around 12 to 15 companies that I can train myself, but I've got so much stuff built out. To be honest with you, like if this was a training session and we're doing, and I actually use StreamYard on that as well. But if we're training and everything, and I just, in the flow of coaching that topic, I come up with something else new. Then as soon as I get out of that, I go in there and I make 2 more slides to coach it, to remind me to coach that. So so that thing is continuously growing, but everything is laid out there. So like my next step is to find good qualified coaches that are in alignment with what I believe, from not only from the skills of sales and the approach to sales, but also in the personal development and leadership development. And so that's gonna be my next step is to acquire some coaches that I can bring in to help me serve as many people as we can.
I love it, man. And I'll tell you what, we've been on this podcast for an hour and a half. And I told you when we started, I'm going to keep it around an hour. I guarantee I could do another hour and a half with you right now, and it wouldn't even be an issue at all. So before I bid you adieu, my friend, I definitely want to throw out an invitation for you to come back and do another episode somewhere down the road. I think we've still got plenty of things that we can cover and can be very entertaining with. And I thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me. Sure. And this has been super enjoyable for me. I really love it. And I love the energy. So thank you for that. Thank you for everybody that watches Keepin' It Rio. The one thing I always forget, and I remember at the very end, is I want to give a shout out to my sponsors, Roofer. I love everybody over at Roofer. We're coming up on our 3rd year of them being my title sponsor of the podcast. We're going to do some cool things together in the future as well. And I always thank anybody that watches this show. It's crazy, but I did this podcast kind of as a way just to learn how to talk to people more and to get more diversity. And most of the people I meet 30, 45 seconds before we record, just like you and I did, and we see where things go. But those communication skills are getting sharper just because of being on a podcast. I'm having a blast doing it. I appreciate everybody that watches and subscribes and likes and tells their friends. And that's pretty much it, Ken. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And we'll do it again in the near future, if that's all right with you.
For sure. I appreciate you, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
You got it, buddy. Till next time, ladies and gentlemen, I always end with the corniest tagline in the history of podcast, which is keep on keeping it Rio. We'll see you guys next